Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today on this Tuesday afternoon on our Uppercut Live. And I always like to begin by thanking everybody for all of your emails and texts and the shares. Please share this out. We appreciate your trying to get our message out there to all the independent optometrists and medical practitioners. And it's been an exciting couple of weeks for us. We've been traveling a bunch from Alabama, Atlanta, New York, Florida, and people have been breaking up as parts of our teams of where they're going. So it's been really exciting. And I just do want to, thank everybody that's come on board with us and our new clients that we've signed. It's been a really exciting time the last couple of weeks.
Yes, it has.
But I'm sure you're really on here not to hear about that, and everybody wants to hear about our topic for today, about the independent optometry and medical world being under siege from private equity. So, John, did you want to start off as we talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so first I'd like to just give a little bit of a background. We went to Vision Expo East, I guess it was a couple weeks ago already, and they had a big meeting about private equity. The chatter was all over after that meeting. And we've heard from a few doctors about it, some positives, some negatives. So in the beginning, I would just like to talk about what private equity groups are about and what they are looking to do, what they want. And then after that, we'll kind of dissect that a little bit and go into a little bit more. So private equity groups are mainly focused on consolidating, right? So they want to consolidate individual practices and use what they call this hub and spoke method, whereas they will look into a certain regional location and purchase a larger practice that they would call the hub. And then they would purchase smaller practices in that area, which would be the spokes. Now the hub would be the central location where they would have, say, all of the billing going through that, all of the lab going through that, maybe the human resources, maybe the marketing. So it's all in that central location, and then the spokes would kind of feed off of that location. So that is their model on how they try to consolidate things, because they're consolidating all of a lot of the cost of goods and just expenses in general from that. From there, who do they seek out? I don't know if you want to touch on their method of how they go about talking to owner ODs on if they'd like to sell their practice.
Yeah, they are, we've been contacted by a number of private equity groups over the past year for our practice here, and they are seeking a specific target. They are looking for practice owners that are stressed out by the day-to-day and are not looking to run a business. Because let's face facts, when we go to school in any medical profession, we are not taught how to run a business. We're taught the skills to be a successful optometrist, ophthalmologist, or medical practitioner. So we come out, we're automatically in this setting, and a lot of us buy practices right off the bat, and we're expected to know how to budget and run different areas of a company, like you're running a complete company. Now, if you don't have that financial background, it can be really challenging because you're trying to see patients, so you're just getting used to seeing patients, and you're trying to run the business. And as we know, we did it, it takes time to go through that learning curve. But the private equity groups are looking for those doctors that are looking more for that work-life balance, or they just want to see patients and they don't want to handle the running of the business. And for me, that doesn't work because I'm and John, we enjoy running our business. It's as exciting as it is as seeing the patients over the years. And it can be very rewarding, you know. So they are looking for a target on doctors that are looking for less stress, more family time or work-life balance, you know, and just being the doctor and seeing the patients. So that's where they feel that there's a niche for them to come in, run the business more efficiently, get their returns, and make no mistake about it, they are about returns.
Absolutely.
They're not coming there to hold your hands and be your friend, right? They're coming there because they have investors in their company and they need to get returns to them. And when the market changes, well, there's going to be different financial stresses that are given in this private equity on those medical practices. And it's going to change that dynamic on how it runs, you know, and there's people that have worked for you for years, that you know, their family and stuff.
Yeah.
So a lot of dynamics, I think, are going to change.
Yeah, they pitch, you know, they pitch it to the doctor that they want, you know, they'll let you do what you were trained to do, all right, and that's be a doctor. Well, you know, years ago, I feel as though we all had the equal opportunity to own our own business and be an eye doctor at the same time. And you know, as we get into this discussion a little later, if this continues on the road it is, there's going to be a huge unfair advantage to the optometry students, and it's you know, they're not going to be in the same situation that we were, and it's really not fair to them, and they're going to school for 8 years to essentially maybe being an employed optometrist, because there may not be any other type of optometrist down the road if this continues in the same fashion, making $70,000 to $100,000 a year after 8 years of school, and a lot of times over $300,000 in debt. You can do the math on that, but I feel as though this needs to really be a wake-up call to not only the optometry students, but the optometry schools themselves. A lot of them are, I'm just going to bottom line it, very ignorant when it comes to practice management courses. And that needs to change. It really needs to change. But again, we'll talk a little bit more about that. So again, they're, you know, they talk about the cost cuttings and savings, and they talk to the doctor as though they are helping the doctor do things for their practice. But it's such confusion in my mind, because it's not going to be their practice.
Right.
And they talk about how, you know, we're going to let you be the doctor. We're going to take care of the business. We're going to make you and your staff, you know, feel so much better about everything. Well, it's not your staff anymore, because you don't own the business. They may say that you have the clinical decision making. That I'm sure will change over time. You have no majority say. You don't own. You might own some of it. You might be in a partnership with them to a certain level. There is such a thing, but they're not giving you majority. Why would they do that? So really, your decisions are okay to a point until they lose money, and then I don't really think your decision means anything if you start losing money.
Yeah.
So.
And we've talked to some doctors that were in the setting as employees before private equity bought the company and after, you know, and we've interviewed some of them where to the point of where they were upset with the changes that were being made, because at the end of the month they were counseled on they didn't do enough contact lens fits, or they didn't do enough special testing, or they didn't do, and so they have numbers that they have to hit. Remember, they're an investment company. Their idea, their main goal is to provide a return on their investment to their equity holders, right? So when a doctor feels that pressure of things, that it's being more based on not the bedside manner and how do you take care of the patients and the standard of care, and they're looking at it just in a computer on the numbers side of things. And don't get me wrong, I am a numbers guy. You need to be, as a doctor, generating a revenue that justifies your salary or your hourly wage. I'm not saying that, you know, you still have to run your business in a smart fashion financially. But some doctors don't like being counseled by non-ODs or MDs on they didn't talk enough about sales aspects of things, you know. So that makes them kind of like, well, why am I here then? So that transition we've experienced, and the ones that come in and they say, well, they expect me to see 40 patients a day. Now, there's nothing wrong with seeing 40 patients a day if the structure is there, the delegation and the staff is there, you know, and the support system is there. We saw 40 patients in a day, and if not more, with the right structure and us going in the room and just being the doctor, right? But that's a big adjustment that if you were seeing 12, 18, or 25 in a day, and now they're going to pay you X, and they're expecting you to see 40 in a day.
Right.
So you really have to know the decision that's being made as when you do sell to them.
Yes.
And also your coworkers that help build your company, that relationship, again, is going to change because they're not happy in this setting that for the people we've been speaking to, you know, recently.
Right. And you are no longer their, you know, their boss. You are an equivalent staff member, really, when you think about that. So if you have any poor relationships with any of your staff members, and now you are on the same, you know, playing field with them, that sometimes doesn't work out very well. But I want to just speak about, and I'm just going to kind of list these off, the big three private equity groups. First is Capital Vision Services. They have over 300 optometry locations in 10 states. They have a major investor. It's called Atlas Capital. I have not done research into them. I will. I will get back to people in posts through Facebook or LinkedIn on that. Second is Eye Care Partners. They are doing business as Clarkson Eye Care, Eye Care Associates, and there's other brands apparently. So it has about 250 predominantly optometric locations in 9 states, and their major investor is FFL Partners. The last of the big three is Eye Care Services Partners Holdings. They do business as Omni Eye Specialists, Katzen Eye Group, and Inland Eye Specialists. And they have about 60 optometric clinics located in 5 states. And again, they have a major investor, and they're called Varsity Healthcare Partners. So, and there's more than one investor, but I'm just naming the major investors. So I'm going to do a little bit more, you know, diving into those. But when you have majority investors, you have to keep them happy. You know, again, it comes back to numbers always. So as much as the private equity group talks to the doctor and says, well, you know, we're going to keep your legacy going. Don't worry about that. We're going to improve this practice and keep your legacy going. Again, their strategy is not long-term. They do not want to hold on to these practices, and we're going to get into this a little later. So I don't know how a legacy even comes into play there. So those are, you know, those are the 3 main private equity groups. Again, they create a network of practices, and their buying power allows them to strongly negotiate their cost of goods, their marketing, their billing, their HR, their electronic health records. So they're all using the same thing, so they get drastic negotiations on that type of thing.
And, you know, just touching about what you said, you know, a few seconds ago about remembering their goal. I mean, if you look at the history of private equity group investment types, the average investment is sold 3 to 5 years out. Okay? So they're looking to take something, restructure it, improve its profit and loss or the company's numbers, and they hold on to it an average of 3 to 5 years. Now that means that the company you are maybe cutting that deal with might not be the owner in 5 years, because they're repackaging it. If they can make money on it, they're going to sell it to someone else, which we'll touch upon that in a little bit. But so you need to understand what their goals are. And if you are a doctor that you expect to practice for 10 or 15 more years, you need to know why they're getting into it and what you're looking to get out of this relationship, because the relationship to me is very one-sided. And I'm not saying that if it's for you and that's what you want to do, then that's what you should do, depending on your own individual situation. But there are other things and factors that come into play that you need to take into account if you're going to be practicing for a number of years.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. They talk with doctors and they say they want to collaborate with the doctors. Okay. So why do they want to collaborate with the doctors? Well, because they don't know what they're doing when it comes to running an optometry practice. They might know numbers, but they don't know people and they don't know culture and things like that, which is extremely important and the most important thing when it comes to having a successful optometry practice. So, they want to essentially use us for our knowledge while we're there, which is that short period of time, that 2 to 5 years. And again, we're not the owner even during those 2 to 5 years. We're just working for them. Now, some of the things that are sort of which makes them attractive is that they have the money power, right? So they can come in and they can get a deal done quickly. Not going to dispute that. They can. They will buy your practice at, instead of the normal, historical generalization of 55 to 65% of the average gross revenue, they may give you 100% of the last 3 years of your gross revenue. But again, these are short-term things, and they attract you with the big dollar. And I'm going to even talk about how even soon-to-be retirees even still need to look at this and shouldn't just sell it to them and see you later, because there are other options that over time would be much more lucrative than that. I mean, literally, if a private equity group came to us, well, I don't think we would sell to them regardless, to be honest with you. But it would have to be probably in the $40 million range if they were going to buy our practice. But
I would think so. I mean, we're still I consider myself young. So,
so for all that time,
we have a long way to go, having kids in college and a number of things. And, looking at the financial side of things, if they come in and they offer us, $40 million up front, well, as we know, the structure of it is really important, because if they're just going to cut us checks for that, the government's going to get the majority
that would be
of
after
that.
taxes.
Yeah. So
no, not before that. It'd be $80 million.
Yeah.
Before taxes.
And you have to look at what you're making each year, plus all the benefits that you're getting, because your health care, your 401k, things that you do as an owner, as a SEP or a profit-sharing tier, all these other things that you're doing as a business owner and writing off, which that's changing a little bit, but there still are write-offs that benefit you. You have to calculate all that in, because the big number at the end of the day after the taxes, how many years are you really gaining after selling it?
Not many, no. You could probably work an extra year, and it'd be the same.
I look at it as, for us, people say, well, when would you retire? And I'm like, well, why would I retire? I love what I do. I run the company. If it's generating revenue, we could run it from anywhere.
Yeah, you
right?
figure out at a certain point when you don't need to see patients anymore, and you run the company. You hire someone to help you run the company.
Yeah.
Why would you sell out early, and when
Yeah.
you know you have this huge investment?
Yeah.
It's got kind of mind-boggling.
I mean, the
to me.
practice to me is our form of an annuity. It's something that's
Right.
going to provide a revenue stream to us for years and years.
Right.
And maybe we're lucky enough where one of our kids actually wants to become
Right.
and go into our field and work here with us. I still probably wouldn't make them take over. I'd still own it with you, but they'd have to earn their way, obviously, to do that.
Right.
This is not, there's no free lunch
That's
here.
right.
So, but this is an annuity stream. You're building a company. You're building something to give you revenue long term. So then you have your retirement funds. You have your revenue stream from your practice. If you own real estate, that's another thing. I'm very big into multiple streams.
Right.
And because the economy is going to change. We've seen it change. It's going to happen again. You need to protect yourself with multiple streams. So you need to take all of that into account, not just with this big number that's kind of given up front.
Yeah. They also talk about, well, for multi-million-dollar practices, it's going to be almost impossible for someone out of school to come and purchase the practice for them. So they're selling, or the market out there for those people who have multi-million-dollar practices is very small in order for potential buyers to buy their practice out. So they say that, well, they can come in and just buy their multi-million-dollar practice. But again, we'll go back to, well, why don't we hire associate doctors and you become the CEO of your company instead of, only looking at it from the fear aspect of, oh, do I have to only see patients and manage the business and do everything? I mean, we are proof that you do not have to do that. You can slowly get out of patient care if that's something you're interested in, and be the CEO of your practice. The other thing that they do is they talk about giving your staff enhanced benefits, more time off, better health plans, better retirement plans. But again, when they speak to the doctor about this, they're purchasing their practice, so it's their staff. It's not the doctor's staff anymore. So again, that's kind of like a little bit of a mind game that I'm not too keen on. And also, Eye Care Services Partners Holdings, they allow some optometrists to take a portion of the sales proceed in the form of equity in the private equity group. So instead of just giving them money for their practice, they tell the doctor, well, you can buy into our private equity group as some of that sale cost. Now, they've just started doing this with optometry. So if you're a retiring doc and you're expecting to have that money, the last thing I would do is to put that money back into a private equity group that you're expecting to be there, who have no long-term results.
Right.
As a potential retirement fund. That is disastrous, and I would never do that.
And it was proven in the last stock market crash, where people had numerous amounts of stocks and shares in the company they worked for. So if you worked for one of the banks, and what happens is they used to bonus out, and they still do, they bonus out money, but in the form of shares each year that you need to hold for a certain amount of years. Well, what happened is, so now your job is dependent on your company that you're working with and your financial retirement part, because you're tied to stock in the same company. So when they do claim bankruptcy, and if you don't think companies claim bankruptcy, just think back to the last crash. They lost everything. So they lost their job, yes. They lost all of those shares in their bonus that they were given. Yeah. So everything imploded on these families because they were all in and not diversified financially. So think of it that way. You're just doing the same thing by getting those shares back in those companies.
Yeah. So some of the the obvious disadvantages of going, besides what we talked about, going with private equity groups, that we hear from doctors that have done it, it's, they are most likely going to eliminate positions. And this isn't for everyone, but, let's be realistic here. The goal is to make numbers and to be as lean as possible, and to get the maximum amount of value in the shortest amount of time. So eliminating positions is one way to do that in the office. They may force you as the owner to see more patients than you're used to. And then if you don't produce in the contract, there are contracts that say, well, now they will pay you less money because the practice is not doing what they thought. So they save themselves on both ends there. As far as the systems of the office, well, they are going to change them, and they're going to implement their own EMR system, their own practice management software. Sure. This is going to be all new things that the staff and you, as the once owner, have to relearn. And I don't know if anyone's heard about a little bit of an issue with electronic medical records over the past 10 years and how they're maybe slightly difficult to deal with. But these are real things that will happen if you don't use the same systems that they are using already. They also have non-compete clauses in there that can extend 5 years or so, and it could be a 25-mile radius. So even after you leave, you won't be able to work anywhere near
where you built the practice.
Yeah. So there's that part of it.
Yeah.
Now,
and they are going to, and I know John talked about it, but they are going to look at revenue numbers. That is what drives what they're doing. That's why they're investing in your practice. So if those revenues are not there, the whole dynamic will change on what you're making, what other people are making. And think about it, for me and you, we have people that have worked with us the whole 17 years. For us to have to be in that situation where people that have helped us build a great company and taken care of so many patients, for them to be in a different situation than they came on board with, that would just make me feel really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because I kind of, when we hired them, we gave them our word that we're going to do the best we can to provide great patient care, the best, and to provide for their family,
right.
And it is a sad thing, that the transition part to them is not in, and it shouldn't be in their best interest, but I feel they've given so many years to us that we do need to take them into account a little bit when we're trying to transition or sell the practice to a private equity group, if that's what people are looking to do.
Okay, so I wrote down a little thing here as far as like a look into the future with private equity groups. And so if it goes in this route where they continue to buy independent optometry offices, obviously less and less optometrists will own their own practices. Private equity groups obviously care about the bottom line and the top line. They don't care about our feelings, although they may massage you on the back in the beginning when trying to buy their practice from you. Please don't let that dissuade you from your long-term thinking. The short-term emotional part of having a bad week, having a bad month, having a bad year, people are leaving, the turnover, the this, the that. Those are emotional things that they play off of to make you sell to them. And there are much better solutions than that. But anyway, so after 3 to 5 years, they're most likely going to sell these practices. And all of the upcoming graduates in optometry schools that come out of optometry school, won't be able to purchase these practices. So they will all be employees. And that's pretty sad. So again, most new employees will be probably making between $70,000 and $100,000 unless you're seeing 40 patients a day. And how long does that last? unless you're super delegated, and if you have no vested interest in the practice, I don't know if docs are going to want to see 40 patients a day. So again, why would you want to go to school for 8 years and end up making that?
Yeah,
really.
I mean, the amount of debt that students are coming out with, I mean, doctors we've been talking to and students in our group are, you know, $300,000-$400,000 in debt, you know, so they signed on to provide great care, but they also expect to be at a certain financial area, and they're paying for a house without having the house.
Right.
For their education now, right? So if they're going into these settings and they're capped at what they can do, because I'm such a big believer in, we'll call it the American dream, and owning your own business and being able to take it to wherever you want based on your hard work, because I know I'm going to outwork somebody else. I know we are going to do that as a team, and that's really what I believe in personally. And you're taking that dream away from all of these students that are coming out, that they just are going to go be employees, and they're going to have to see between who knows how many patients, up to 40, 45 in a day, to get X amount of dollars. And I'm going to tell you, seeing 40, 45 a day for 12 or 13 years does take its toll.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely.
And we've done it. So we know it's rewarding in one sense. We did it to build ourselves for the bigger picture of where we are now, but you really need to take all of those things into account, because they're not going to be able to pay back a house mortgage that they don't have the house for, plus where they're living, plus all their regular expenses. It's going to be very challenging for our entire medical profession.
Right.
You know?
Right. There was recently an OD that I just saw online. He wrote a little article about, he just sold his practice to a private equity group. This letter was literally 2 weeks ago, I think. And his reasons for selling were this. He felt that the private equity group would allow his family to maintain the level of patient care he strove for while lessening the business burden. He has children who are also optometrists. And at one point, he thought that he would be selling it to them. He says that he continues to be involved in the clinical direction. But again, this has just started. I don't know how long that's going to last for, especially when it's a 3 to 5 year investment that they're going to sell, that his children work at, I believe, right now as optometrists. But he said he wanted to be sure he made the right choice for his children. So I don't really understand that. He's no longer the CEO of the practice. I don't really understand how this protects his children, who are optometrists, that now work for an investment. So that somebody else's investment, a majority investor out there, which we don't really know anything about, in the hands of your children who went to optometry school, are in this 3 to 5 year investment, and after that, God knows what's going to happen with them. So who are the private equity groups going to sell all of these practices to? So if these are 3 to 5 year investments, who are they going to sell them to? And this is where it all kind of comes together. And to me, there's two obvious answers. Number one is VSP. VSP, apparently, and this is what I heard during the Vision Expo, has an extreme interest in private equity groups.
The same VSP that was built by
ODs.
By ODs, private practitioners. Right. They're the ones that are looking to come into the space and be our
now. Do they own any eye doctor offices at this point?
So I don't think technically they own any as their own entity.
Right.
You know, we know that there's lots of these hybrid things out there,
optical
relationships and so forth, that they take over the lab and they get the revenue for that. They run your lab for you. So there's numbers of things that relationships that are put together. But I don't think VSP technically, at least I can't find at this point, that they actually own something like that themselves. If it's not in their own space, they are doing their own things inside their own employment centers and stuff.
So VSP, there's VSP and there's IMED. And IMED is Luxottica and Essilor, right? The merger. So Luxottica, Essilor, they own IMED. They also own LensCrafters. VSP, I would assume, would love to get in that space and buy up these offices from private equity groups. So now, and I would also think that EssilorLuxottica would want to continue. They would be my number 2 guess at purchasing more offices. So now, if this continues along this line, you are going to have enormous amounts of offices owned by the 2 biggest vision insurance plans.
And if that's not a conflict of interest, I don't know what is.
Right.
So they're insuring patients. Well, we'll call them insurance. We'll call them vision plans. We could argue, have a different discussion about insurance versus vision plan coverage. But using that, what you just said, John, is we should ask the opticians how that worked out for them. Essilor partnered with numerous labs in the Northeast region. Right? They're going to help them grow. Okay? In our area alone,
it was the smallest state in the country.
Smallest state. 2 labs have been closed that partnered with Essilor, and I know more are going to happen where they just did that protocol that you explained, where they absorbed into their main location and they're going to send all of that lab work to where they want to send it to, and they've let go of all those people that were employees in those
just
companies.
Closed shop.
Yes. So the relationship of I'm going to partner with you to grow your business for opticians and lab owners turned into I am going to pay you money and I'm going to close your business and I will send all of your revenue and volume to my main location. Right?
Yeah.
So that's what happened. What happened in our area. And
Yeah.
I'm sure, I know it's happened in other areas too.
Yeah, so this is very real. Not going to lie. And this could potentially make a huge dent into our profession and could possibly ruin our profession as we know it now. There may still be optometrists. There might not be. And I wouldn't be one. If I was making $70,000 seeing 40 patients, I wouldn't. But anyway, and I know for us, we're not going to take it laying down. We are already trying to create solutions on different ways to help independent owner ODs manage their practices. There are way better solutions than just selling out to a private equity group. And we've just mentioned a whole bunch of reasons why the trickle-down effect of how this can ruin our profession. And why did you want to go to optometry school to begin with? I just would like everyone to kind of think about that for a little bit. And I want to leave you with this gentleman by the name of Christopher Fusco from the private equity group ESP. And he recently said this, and this is a quote: "For young doctors wanting to own their own practice, beware. Ownership equals responsibility and capital risk, as well as risk associated with employment regulations, billing and coding compliance, and HIPAA compliance." I was paraphrasing there, but that's pretty much what I believe he meant there. So beware. So, Christopher, with all due respect, I'm going to tell you to beware. because we are the doctors. And ultimately, we get the end say. We have the degrees. And I will fight for this until I'm in my grave to make sure that we don't allow you to speak about new optometry students like that. So we need the optometry schools to understand the gravity of this issue. Yes, we all need to be great clinicians, but we need to understand how to run businesses also. Nothing against my biochem teacher in SUNY. I love him, Dr. Rapp, I think. But I think it is just as important to have multiple practice management courses in school to help these young doctors be able to have their own practices.
And if they're not, why are they not?
Right.
Are they really trying to help us get out and be the most successful practitioners we can be if they won't provide this type of service and education? Because it is so important. And we can't let the schools, if they're not allowing it, or the private equity groups, use the fear factor, right? It's all about the fear.
That's
right. I did it with my kids when they were younger. Use the fear factor. Don't do that, you're going to get hurt. Well, you know what? That's not teaching them how to be better, right? What's going to teach us is educating, working together as private practitioners, controlling our own profession, because at the end of the day, it's about the patients, and the patient's care is going to suffer.
Yeah.
Because we know we provide great top-level care in what we do. So you can't let them use these fear factors and words to scare you that you are less than you really are, that you can't run a business.
Right. We are the doctors. Everything revolves around us, and I think we've forgotten about that. Nothing else can happen if we say no.
Yeah.
Right?
If all the doctors leave those groups, they don't make a dollar.
That's right. So there are much better solutions. Again, Scott and I are going to be working on these solutions. I think it would be great to do another live on some of these different solutions, on, better ways to run your practice, manage your practice, sell your practice, versus just giving it to a private equity group that ultimately is going to sell it to vision plans.
Yeah. We appreciate your time very much today. We hope we've answered a lot of questions that we've received, and please send us more messages, emails, or texts if you have questions not only about this topic, but about anything else, because we always do take them into account for our future lives and try to get back to you individually. But, we practice in a great profession. We've been very blessed, and we just want to communicate that out there to everyone. And share this out if you get a chance. We really hope you would, so we have more people just being educated on what's going on in our industry,
Right.
But we want you guys to make it a great week for yourselves, and thank you very much for spending your time with us.
Thank you.